Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another POV test drive. It's a super windy day up here in the canyon, so we've actually decided to do the introduction part from inside the car. So this is George here, and this is his 2005 Mazda Miata. So do you want to say a few things about the car first?
Yeah, so far, the mod that I've done to it is it has a Miata Roadster short shifter kit. It's a tall, angled one. I have teen Street Flex coilovers with EDFC, so it's active dampening. Or it's not active, but I can do it on the fly.
So basically that has motors that are just attached to the dampening adjusters at the front, right?
Yep.
In the back too.
And then it has a 949 Racing dual duty alignment. And then I have a Boss Frog Clearview roll bar in the back. And it has a Flying Miata front sway bar. And that's about it.
So one interesting fact about George is that he's actually not old enough to have his driver's license yet. He just has a permit right now. So I think it's really cool that he has a Miata. He already has done mods to it. He works on it himself. And you said that you actually took it to Laguna Seca once, right?
Yeah, I took it to Laguna Seca for the MRLS event, which is a Miata-only event for a weekend. So that was a lot of fun.
Did you actually get lap times there?
No lap times.
No lap times.
But it was
Still a lot of fun.
Kind of like, yeah, it was just open.
And so your experience with cars and racing before has been limited to just basically karting, right?
Yeah, just go-karting.
But you've done a lot of that, so
yeah,
you felt more or less at home at the racetrack.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool.
And given that the Miata is really small and light, it handles
pretty much like a go-kart, right?
So.
Yeah, that's what people say. It's a cliche, but it's honestly, I was just driving it on the uphill part, and it does feel like a go-kart.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's take it for a test drive and see how it does. I want to especially compare it to the NA Miata that I recently drove. All right, so being a 2005 model, this was the last year that they made the second-gen NB Miata, right?
Yep.
So this has the 1.8-liter inline four-cylinder, dual overhead cam. Yep. Do you happen to know the engine code for this particular one?
It's a VP 5A, I think. Don't quote me on it.
Okay. So it makes around 140 horsepower in this model, right?
Yeah, it's 147 or something.
Okay. And this car weighs what, around 2,300 pounds or so?
2,400 pounds.
2,400. So that's a good couple hundred pounds heavier than the NA Miata that I drove, but it also has a tad more power and torque.
And it's real.
Yeah. So in a straight line, I think there's probably going to be very little difference from that car. But let's see how the chassis, the brakes, and everything else feels. So in terms of the driving position, it feels almost identical to the NA. You sit very, very low. The seats do a great job of hugging you if you're kind of a smaller guy like I am. The steering wheel feels great, feels very similar to the NA as well. This car has aftermarket pedals on it, so they're a lot wider than the stock pedals. The positioning is fine, but because they're so wide, I don't even have to pivot my heel around to do heel toes. I can just kind of angle it and hit the gas pedal with the right side of my foot. And I've never been able to do that in a car before. I've always had to do the full pivot kind of heel toe. So this might take a little getting used to, but it is definitely convenient and easier to do. And since this car has an aftermarket short shifter kit, it does firm up the shifts a lot, so it requires definitely a lot more effort than the stock shifter, but at the same time it makes it a lot less vague as to which gear you're going into. So in that sense, it feels more like an S2000 or even more similar to my NSX shifter, and I really like it. So what made you originally pick this Miata over, well, all the alternatives that you had, so like an NA Miata or something like a E30 BMW or something like that?
So this is like the newest car that I could find in my price range. So this has like integrated headlights, the interior is nicer, and it has like more safety features too, like ABS and like all those things that you just don't get in an NA or a...
Does this have traction control too?
I don't think so.
Okay. And it does have hydraulic power steering. It feels very nice. And you said you increased the caster angle, right? So it is a little heavier than it. Yeah. So I like this, how the steering feels a little better than the NA I drove. That one, I don't know what alignment settings it had, but the steering was just a little too light for my liking. So this one fixes that issue for me. But like I said, overall it still feels nearly identical to the NA. And if it wasn't for the updated interior, if I was just driving the car with blindfolds on, I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference between this and the NA, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what everybody says for the NA and NB Miatas. The only, unless you're driving it to its limit, very, very hard, that's when you notice the difference. This has a little bit better geometry in the suspension, but that's about it.
Okay.
That's the only difference.
And it's also a little bit heavier, right?
A tad heavier.
If you guys remember from the NA video, I actually could drive that car a lot harder than I could a lot of the other cars that I've driven on this channel. And just for fun one day, I decided to run a side-by-side comparison of the fast portion of this run up here. I did a side-by-side between the NA Miata and pretty much all the other cars I've driven, and the NA Miata was I was able to drive it the fastest through that course, which is crazy because I've driven like a Z06, a 505 horsepower Z06, a 400 horsepower C6 Corvette, a 300 some horsepower E36 M3, like the list goes on, right? But the difference with the NA Miata was that it just gave me so much more confidence, and I could floor it everywhere. So I wasn't shy about using the throttle the way that I was with those other cars. And so that gave me the confidence I needed to drive more quickly. And even if it's not the fastest car in the hands of a professional race car driver on a racetrack, obviously, for a beginning driver, I think it's a great choice. And from what I can tell so far, the NB carries that tradition forward. But let's see in a minute how it does. And you're running stock brakes on here, right?
Yeah, I plan on going to Hawk HP Plus.
Okay.
Pads.
Yeah, I run those in my NSX and my old S2000. They're really good, actually. They do squeal on the street, but once you get them warmed up, they work pretty well. Yeah. All right, so let's see how it does. Yeah, I already have a feeling this is going to be a little bit quicker than the NA. Yeah. And if not for any other reason about the inherent better engineering of this second gen Miata, I think it could just be due to the brakes, because these brakes, despite being stock brakes, they haven't faded on me the way that the NA Miata's faded on me really, really quickly. But in terms of handling, this car is great. I don't know what Chris Harris was talking about when he said Miatas are overrated and they're just good cars for cruising top down on weekends, because To me, this car, like I mentioned earlier, it just gives me a sense of confidence that I just don't get with a lot of higher powered cars. And it's not just the fact that it doesn't have that much power so I can floor it everywhere, but also the chassis just feels very inherently balanced. Despite being front engine, I can still kind of rotate the car on the throttle, almost like a mid-engine car. So mid corner, if I just want to get a little bit more turn in, I just lift the throttle a little bit and it turns in. There's not a whole lot of drama to it at all. And with this Tane coilover suspension setup, while I think at the setting that you had it at before, which is on the stiffer side, it is a little bit too stiff for bumpier roads, but I'm sure on the track it handles great. And there's just enough body roll to where I can feel kind of the weight transfer of the car from left to right and from front to back. But at the same time, it stays planted enough. I don't feel any excessive tire lift during hard cornering. And so it still maintains good traction throughout the corners due to that minimal body roll. But it just gives me a sense of confidence that the NA Miata was very close to this, but this one feels a little bit better set up in my opinion.
That's something that I did notice on track is the you mentioned rotation.
Yeah.
Especially going through turn 2 at Laguna Seca.
Yeah.
That, you can modulate the slip angle with the throttle very easy.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, turn 2 at Laguna Seca is, in my opinion, one of the most tricky corners of that track because it is a double apex corner. There's different ways you can approach that corner, but the way that I've done it in the NSX is try to take more of a middle line. So instead of taking it from the outside in and just trying to hit the second apex, and also instead of trying to hit both apexes with a narrow line, I kind of take a middle line. And when I was doing that, I was getting a lot of lift throttle oversteer because the stock suspension of the NSX, unlike this car, does allow for a lot more body roll, and so the inside left rear wheel during that left corner would just lift up a little bit, and then I would just feel the rear end just start to slide a little bit. I had to correct with quite a bit of a counter steer there.
I found that if you're early apex, the first apex,
yeah,
and then swing wide, and then hit the second apex dead on, it's a pretty good way to get to turn 2.
Okay, I need to try that next time. It just doesn't feel natural to me trying to hit that first apex because you feel like, wow, like I'm carrying too much speed and I've barely started turning yet. I'm just gonna go like straight. Yeah. I'm gonna go really wide off the track. Yeah. But if you actually look at in like a bird's eye view of the track from top down, you'll see that they actually designed it with a lot of runoff space. Yeah. And the track itself is very wide between those two apexes. So I'll definitely give that a try next time and see how it does. So yeah, in a straight line, this car feels maybe a tad peppier than the NA. It's too negligible to really tell the difference, but I think the chassis, it could just be due to the way that you've set it up. It just feels a little more balanced, a little grippier, despite the tires being like what, Nexen something,
yeah,
some off-brand crap tire. You know, it doesn't feel bad at all, and I would say that in terms of handling, it comes close to the S2000, just subjectively how I feel. It gives me the same sense of confidence, the same lightning quick turn-in response, and the steering, it feels good when I'm pushing the car hard, but I still feel like it could have a little bit more feel to it. I think it could load up a little bit better in the corners, which is one thing that the S2000 did better, I think. But at the same time, the on-center feel of this steering is quite a bit better than the S2000. The S2000 had a dead spot on center that this does not have.
It's pretty annoying on the highway though, because like if you're just
it wanders a little bit.
Like if you turn it like the slightest bit, it
yeah.
wants to like
yeah.
move over. You know?
Yeah. So this car definitely always feels like it's on its tiptoes. It's always ready to respond to the driver's inputs. And so for that, it might not be the most relaxed daily driver, but then again, it's not. I mean, it is a 2-seater roadster, right? So it's not the most practical car to daily drive to begin with. But when the road does get smoother, it still soaks up the bumps fairly well, and the steering feels fine. It's really easy to drive, actually.
What do you think I should do next?
What you should do next is take it to the track again. My philosophy with owning a sports car is find the limits of the car in a safe environment first, and then figure out what the weaknesses are, and then improve upon those weaknesses with mods. I will say that most likely you'll find that the limiting factor in this car is going to be the tires and the brakes. But you said you already have plans to get HP Plus in the future, so that's a good option. And then once you'll also find that when you quickly put a lot of heat into these just basic street tires, they will start to get really slick and slippery and wear out faster as well.
In the Miata community, the RS3 is one of the best tires that you can get for this car. So. Okay.
Yeah, just go with what's proven on the forums for your car, and you won't have any problems with that. So overall, I'm not surprised at all that I really love the way this Miata drives. No exaggeration at all. I think out of all the cars I've reviewed so far, this one is the most confidence-inspiring on that stretch of road. Even more confidence-inspiring than the NA Miata just because of the brakes. These brakes haven't faded on me yet.
The 1.8 brakes are...
Are they bigger rotors?
Yeah. This has the sport brakes on it.
Yeah, the brake feel is great, and so overall the car is awesome. I think for any other beginning car enthusiast out there who wants to get into track days or autocross, I know this makes an awesome autocross car as well. Miata, you just can't go wrong. NA, NB, or if you have the money, NC, although personally I think those are just god-awful ugly.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong. And
for the money, I'd rather have an S2000.
Yeah. S2000, you're going to be spending 2 to 3 times as much money. You'll get a lot more performance out of it, but as a beginning car enthusiast, I think this car is easier to push to the limit, and it also has a more progressive feel to the way it loses grip. The S2000 can be a little more snappy. So overall, great car. Any beginning auto enthusiast should look into one of these. I don't want to say they're expendable cars because they're still, you still should take care of it and everything, but they're so easy to find nowadays that you don't have to feel so bad about getting a few door dings or whatnot, right? So thanks again, George, for letting me drive your car. So this is the second Miata I've driven. I would like to try an NC and maybe an ND one day and see how those do. I also love to try a turbocharged Miata or supercharged. The supercharged NB versus the S2000, that would be a very interesting comparison, in my opinion.
I actually rode in a turbo NB, 04. It kept up with my brother's car, which had 330 approximately.
You said he has a WRX, right?
Yeah. It was surprisingly fast.
Yeah, lightweight is key. In the corners, when it gets twisty, it doesn't matter how much power you have. If you can't put the power down, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. It only had 205 horsepower, too.
Hey, for a 2,000-ish pound car, that's plenty of power. So. Yeah, so thanks again, guys, for watching my video. If you liked it, please comment, subscribe to my channel, and look forward to future videos from me. I have one video hopefully coming up in the next few weeks. It's a Mark IV Supra, so stay tuned for that. See you guys next time.